This is Byron Gordon for the SES Conference Channel. It's day 2 at SES Toronto. And this afternoon we're speaking with Guillaume. How are you, Guillaume?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Guillaume, you're going to be speaking on the Canada-specific SEO and PPC issues panel.
Yep.
And I thought that maybe you could share with our viewers a little preview about some of the key things you're going to be talking about. And maybe we could just first of all start off with what are some of the challenges faced by Canadian search marketers today?
In my presentation, I'm covering more the Quebec market, and it is a very different market, I would say, from the rest of North America, in the sense that we have to deal with French and English. It's a bilingual market, and the presentation I'm giving is talking a little bit more about what are the differences all across Quebec, because Montreal is a bilingual city, but the rest of Quebec is 95% plus French. So there's really some subtleties to play around when, for example, you're running a paid search, because, for example, it could perform better outside of Montreal or worse, like one or the other. So there's really a couple things different that you need to address. So specifically, usually Canadian websites are poorly translated into French, but some are. So it's really trying to find the best fit for whatever is being done in Quebec.
So let's, an example, when you're talking about, say, for example, the URL, how important is it to have a .ca at the end of it when you're marketing a site, say in Quebec, for example? Is that something of significance?
I think it is. Like Google.com is the base filter, and the .ca is the filter, the Canadian filter. And to be able to rank well on Google.ca French, it's really better to have a .ca. As an example, if you would have a .fr, you'd be a little bit in trouble because you'd rank better on Google.fr. But I think really it's important to focus. But what I think matters the most is not necessarily that domain name, because we do have, for example, .coms that are ranking really well in French Canada. It is really more where the links are coming from. And that has a big impact in representing something that most of the Americans don't know today. There's an issue in the fact that Google.com is not the same if you're in Canada that if you are in the US. There's two versions of Google.com, the one that is for all the US citizens and one for all the other, let's say, English-speaking people all across the planet. So if you would be, let's say, in Canada or in Switzerland or in Denmark or wherever you are, you will get X result, which is the same for Canada, Denmark, and all the others. If you go in the US, you will get a different result out of that .com. So that's a subtlety that a lot of Americans don't know when they're trying to go in the Canadian market, which is kind of the international market in a way. So they're looking at their rankings at home and they're like, oh, I'm ranking well on Google.com, but they're not necessarily, it's not because you rank well on the .com US that you will rank well on the .com international version. So that's one thing that we have to play about and we play with, and that we discovered when we were doing a lot of stuff. Because a lot of companies, Canadian companies, they want to rank in the US, but then we were looking at different results and we didn't know what was going on, and we found that out. And it's been going on for almost a year, and I haven't seen it in many of the presentations. I haven't seen it anywhere from US presentators.
And again, the significance of the language barrier. Talk about that again.
I think what the main barrier is that sometimes, let's say we're in Toronto, we'll have a company that has to do a website for French, for Quebec. Problem is sometimes they have people from France, and they will write some sort of a French from France kind of text. So and they'll get interns, for example, and they will do that work. But the problem that we get is you cannot talk to a French from France the way you can talk to a French Quebecer. So whatever you do in any strategy that you plan, if you really have a global approach and want to tap in those 4 million active French Canadian, you have to make sure you have someone from Quebec that understands the language, all the slang that goes around it, because that's really important with building landing pages, targeting the right keywords and stuff like that. As an example, in Quebec, the word, I'm going to use the translated word, but web design in French, it's conception web, that's the most search. But in France, it's création web. And that's, let's say, a 10-to-1 ratio difference. So it's really important to understand which kind of words people are searching. Because when you use most of the Google.ca tools or the Webmaster tools or the keyword tools, you might have the global French picture. So you might be targeting a lot of the French from France audience because the numbers are much higher. There's much more people. On the other hand, it's not necessarily what's going to drive your traffic in Canada.
Guillaume, thanks so much for chatting with us.
Thanks. Have a nice one.
And there's more to come from SES Toronto Day 2. Stay tuned for more.